Let's go to our guest line. Let's talk Georgia Tech football. We bring on Chad Bishop, Georgia Tech beat writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. All right, Chad, undefeated team, ranked 7th in the country. I guess, when's the last time there's been this much excitement around Georgia Tech football? I would imagine it's been a while.
Oh, yeah, it's been a long while. I've only covered Georgia Tech a couple of years, but I am an Atlanta native, so maybe 1990, right, when the team won the national championship. I mean, 98, they were 4-0 in the ACC. There were some great Paul Johnson teams, of course, last decade, but nothing like this in this modern day of college football where you're talking about college football playoff appearance and ACC title game possibilities. It is at an all-time high, I think, right now in Atlanta.
You look at this team, and they've beaten everybody they've played, obviously. Undefeated. They're in the top 10. Very, very good. Do you think that they belong, I guess, in that top 10? Meaning, you look at a close call against Wake Forest, even a close call against Colorado in the opener. The Duke game, Duke seemed to maybe even be the better team for 3 quarters, but just couldn't score. And Georgia Tech, was able to win that game. Do you feel like they belong truly in that top 10?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, top 5, I don't know if they're there yet. Top 10, I think you have a strong case. I mean, I think there's something to be said for going on the road and winning at Colorado. That's a tough place to play despite Colorado's struggles this year. Beating Clemson, who a lot of people in the South thought would be a national title contender. Turns out they're far from that, but still, at the time, Clemson was a top 12 team, and they knocked them off. Winning Power 4 conference games on the road is not not easy by any stretch of the imagination. So they've taken care of business, and they've looked pretty good for the most part, doing it week in and week out. And then I think there's something to be said for also, blowing out Gardner-Webb and handling Temple pretty easily. They've done those tasks as well. So, does it translate to a deep run in December? I don't know, but I think right now here toward the end of October, being one of 6 remaining undefeated teams, there's definitely something to be said for that. They've taken care of business, so they deserve some of this notoriety so far.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, they've beaten everybody on their schedule, and you look at their remaining schedule from an ACC perspective, pretty favorable path the rest of the way. Syracuse, NC State, BC, Pitt. Again, for the purposes of the ACC title game, that game against Georgia doesn't matter. I know it matters, certainly to Georgia Tech, but it doesn't matter in the ACC standings. When you look at those last 4 ACC games, Chad, which game do you expect to give, which opponent, I guess, do you expect to give Georgia Tech its biggest challenge the rest of the way?
Well, I think it's both those North Carolina State and Pittsburgh games. NC State is going to be on the road. Dave Doran typically fields a really tough team. Offensively, they'll be tough. So I think you have to circle that one. And then the way Pittsburgh is playing right now with their hotshot freshman quarterback, I mean, they've certainly turned a corner and look like a really, really tough team, sort of sneakily climbing up those ACC standings. Georgia Tech gets them at home for sure, but those 2 teams right there are really Tech's biggest quote unquote test the rest of the way in ACC play. So, but that all that to say, Tech doesn't really pull away from anyone in ACC play. They don't really beat anyone by, 3-4 touchdowns. Week in and week out, it's a tough game for those guys, and I would expect every single ACC game moving forward to be the same.
We talked coming into the year about Haynes King and the fact that he was back, and we thought Georgia Tech, could have a really good year, and that's exactly what's happened. He's got 10 rushing touchdowns already this season. The entire Syracuse offense has 9 rushing touchdowns. We were talking about that yesterday. What makes him so special, and what makes him, the right leader for this particular team this year?
Well, his head coach is a former offensive lineman. Haynes King's father is a longtime high school football coach in Texas and also played offensive line in college. So the joke is that Haynes King is an offensive lineman in a quarterback's body. Just the way he puts the team on his shoulders, does the dirty work, the way he runs the ball with putting his head down, the way he emerges from a pile, with a limp or a bad shoulder, whatever the case may be. He just keeps on going and just has a will to win and has sort of created a legacy of being a once-in-a-generation special player for this football program. The team rallies around him. He's not necessarily the rah-rah leader, but he leads by example and just does his job, just does his work. And that's that's really the identity of this Tech football team, right? I mean, like, run the football 3 yards in a cloud of death, offensive line play. It's not super flashy. It can be at times, but that's not really their MO. And Haynes King just leads in that example every single Saturday, and has really taken on that leadership role as well. Hasn't shied away from it, and does a ton of media interviews and likes being the face of the program, but also, pretty humble kid and puts the team first, and that's why they're having all this success.
On the other side of things, talking about SU's quarterback now, as you well know, they lost Steve Angeli to injury during that Clemson win, and they've had Ricky Collins these last 3 games start for them. They're 0-3. They're losing the turnover battle. He's been struggling. I know that Georgia Tech statistically has been struggling a little bit against the run this year, but given that they're going up against a second-string quarterback in Ricky Collins, one who's had trouble throwing the ball down the field, do you expect Georgia Tech is going to stack the box tomorrow and try to force Ricky Collins to beat them through the air? Is that the game plan going in your mind?
I don't know necessarily. Here's a couple factors. Georgia Tech starting cornerback Amari Harvey is out. He got hurt against Virginia Tech, a really severe ankle injury. They expect him back, but definitely not this week. Jai Gilmore, the reigning ACC Defensive Back of the Week, he's questionable. He may not play. And Tech's passing defense, really their defense as a whole statistically, has not been good. And so I think there'll be some yards to be gained for Syracuse. Now, they held Duke to 68 yards rushing, which was pretty impressive. But on the flip side, Darian Mensah threw the ball all over the place. From their perspective defensively, they rotate a ton of guys on the defensive front. I don't expect them to get a ton of sacks. And again, they really haven't created a ton of takeaways. They've sort of lived by this bend, don't break mantra, and it's worked for them to this point. So I don't know if they're going to, just because they're playing Ricky Collins and a suspect, Syracuse offense, I don't know that they're going to change a whole lot, because right now it's working for them. And, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Interesting. Yeah, for sure. Really insightful answer. You look at the head coach there, Brent Key, and they've had a lot of success, and he's got Tech undefeated. He's got him in the top 10. He's got him on the inside track to the ACC title game. Is the fan base down there concerned about him looking around after the season and maybe, trying to find another job, maybe a more prestigious job, quote unquote?
Yeah, I would suspect a lot of the fan base probably is, because they're probably pinching themselves like, is this too good to be true? Do we really have one of our own lead in the football program? Are we really undefeated and ranked 7th in the country? But as you guys know, Brent Key's an alum. He loves Georgia Tech. He loves Atlanta. That doesn't mean he wouldn't leave one day. Doesn't mean some big time blue blood program is going to come throw a huge bundle of money at them. What I would tell Tech fans is that, we have heard asking around that the Tech brass, they have a plan, they have a strategy, they're being proactive in this situation. They want to make Brent Key a lot of money and keep him at Georgia Tech for a long time, and I would suspect that he wants to be at Georgia Tech for a long time. So there will always be that fear, I think, but Tech, I think, is being proactive behind the scenes to try to get something done toward the end of the season, if not in the off season, to make Brent Key Tech's coach for a very, very long time.
I know that you remember this. Just to remind our listeners of this, last year there was a little bit of drama between Fran Brown and Brent Key. The press conferences, Brent Key, said that he didn't really know Fran, even though Fran played, on a team that he was a coach of, and there was some drama there. Fran kind of took it personally. This year, does it seem to you that that's just water under the bridge? I saw Brent Key's press conference the other day, and he spoke highly of Fran and the job he's done, and so on and so forth. Is that kind of over and done with from last year?
I think so. Excuse me. I watch those guys down at ACC spring meetings down in Florida. I watch them yuck it up and talk. And Brent Key was asked about it at ACC football kickoff down in Charlotte by someone, and he to your exact words that he used, water under the bridge. We talked about it. I think there was probably an understanding that Fran Brown had to do what he had to do to fire up his team that week, and it worked like a charm, right? They came out guns a-blazing and put it on the Yellow Jackets. I think Brent Key certainly understand that. Maybe not appreciative that he was on the other side of it, right? But I think he understood, right? Like, coaches do what they have to do to win a football game. It really hasn't even been brought up this week. And the other part of that, right, is like Tech is 7-0, and they're trying to run the table. And Syracuse has its own problems,
Sure.
and I just don't really think that those coaches right now, they got too much to worry about from that little drama, right?
That's fair. That's fair. We're going to circle back and get your prediction here in a moment, but I do want to ask you a couple basketball questions. We had you on back in the spring when Naithan George committed to Syracuse. What are you expecting out of him? There's a lot of hype around this young man this year for Syracuse. Do you expect him to come in and kind of replicate what he was able to do last year for the Yellow Jackets?
I think so. He's been named a captain, right? Did I see that?
He has.
That's great news. Yeah, for now. I mean, I think I told you guys, I've always loved Nate. Great kid, really, really down to earth, really humble. I always go back to the story when he committed to Georgia Tech, and I called him up as a recruit, and he said, "Yeah, looking forward to be there in a couple of days." And excuse me, because we thought he was the next class over, and he had reclassified. Just that sort of spoke to the humility of who he was. Like, just goes about his business, loves on the floor, loves to get teammates involved, loves to rack up those assist numbers. He's got some work to do defensively, right? But like what college player doesn't? I just think he's going to come in there and compete. I mean, the kid loves to win and he hates to lose, and that's going to be big for any basketball team. So I would expect big numbers from Nate. Great kid and great competitor, and I'm sure he's happy to be playing a little bit closer to home and potentially be playing for a team that has NCAA tournament aspirations.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the expectation around here is it's time to get back to the tournament after a 4-year absence. What about with Georgia Tech? What can we expect from Georgia Tech hoops this year?
We don't have any idea. I mean, it's, you know how it is these days, guys. It's
Sure.
like it's AAU basketball. I mean, every year the roster is different. Tech's talent is very, very good again, but they just have not got over that proverbial hump when it comes to making the NCAA tournament or even really sniffing the tournament under Damon Stoudemire. They have Bayan Dongo back, who's one of the best centers in the league. They have a young kid by the name of Mo Silla, who's also going to play center, who Damon Stoudemire is hinting could be a one-and-done or a two-and-done pro prospect. But only 4 guys come back from last year's team, so they've sort of redone this whole thing again. Their non-conference schedule is one of the softest I've ever seen, so they should be able to rack up wins. But once they get into ACC play, we just don't know what to expect from this team if they can be able to put it all together. Maybe they do. Maybe they win 20 games and get to the promised land, or maybe they're another 500 team. So I wish I could give you a better answer, but there's just so much unknown with this basketball program right now.
That's fair. I mean, we've been talking about the same thing for weeks. Syracuse literally has 2 returning players from last year's team. Everybody else is brand new. So it should be interesting, and SU's got their first exhibition game tomorrow night, right after the football game. It's going to be a long day for SU fans tomorrow. There's a football game at noon, and then the exhibition game coming up at 7. As we circle back to the football game now, Chad, prediction on what happens tomorrow. Who wins and why come tomorrow afternoon?
I think in the end, Georgia Tech will probably win the game like it has won most every other game this season, where they just continue to pound away and wear the opponent down. Georgia Tech on paper certainly is the much better team. I mean, they have almost 30 seniors. They have an outstanding offensive rushing attack. Defensively, they've done enough to keep opponents in check, and there's a reason they're ranked 7th in the country. That being said, they don't blow teams out. I did the math today. Brent Key has 18 ACC wins by a margin of about 7 points.
Wow.
So it's going to be a close. I mean, 3 of those wins have been by 1 point exactly. Even against Virginia Tech in the year, 35-20, right? Duke 27-18, Clemson 24-21. It really doesn't seem to matter what the opponent is doing. Tech is going to play a close game into the 4th quarter. So that being said, I think they probably pull away in the second half, maybe win this one like a 35-21, 33-21 sort of final in the end.
All right. It seems fair to us. I mean, we've been kind of saying the same thing. Georgia Tech probably wins, but hopefully SU can keep it close for a while and give themselves a chance in the second half. Chad, we appreciate the time. Great insight. Enjoy the weekend, and hopefully we can chat again down the road.
All right, friends. Talk soon.
All right. Chad Bishop from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. With that, we'll take a timeout. We'll check in on the market next as we wrap up hour number 1 on the other side. Back after this on ESPN.